we all love to think there's like this effortless, fun, happy default state that we could all go back to if only we solve the next problem around the corner. But once you know that the state of nature was not effortless happiness, then it makes it, I think, a little easier to appreciate what you have.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. It's Rick Nusky here. I'm the host of the show and I'm the luckiest man in the world. I always say it because I get to speak with some amazing professionals. And on today's call, I'm with Loretta Breuning. How are you, Loretta?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Not a problem at all. We were just talking about Captain Cook, weren't we?
Yes, yes. I love the historical roots of our thinking, and I guess that's something that excites me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can obviously tell that you're right into books because you've authored a couple of your own, haven't you?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and on today's call, everybody, we're going to be talking a little bit about both of those books. In fact, they're called Habits of a Happy Brain and Tame Your Anxiety. Now, from a business perspective, if you're wondering, when you're interacting with others, why you feel up one moment, why you feel down another, there's a real reason for this, and we're going to explore the essence of why that might be. And again, Loretta, we were also touching on Charles Darwin and the Darwinism theory of evolution. I was wondering if we could just start off by introducing a little bit about yourself, please, and then maybe we could start there and talk about this whole process and how it came to be that you're involved in this wonderful field.
Sure. Well, I was a professor of management for 25 years, and I've been trained in what I call the social science worldview, which is that life should be happy all the time, and something has gone wrong with our world, but everything was happy at some earlier perfect state. And then when I looked at my kids and my students, I didn't see any evidence of that.
No.
So that motivated me to look closer at the research. And I found that the brain chemicals that make us feel good are the same in animals. And it's easy to understand what these chemicals do in animals because they don't have a verbal brain to give them like a polite spin. And so when I learned what these chemicals do in animals, it really blew my mind. And the simple answer to address what you said is that the happy chemicals are not designed to be on all the time. Our brain did not evolve to make us happy. It evolved to promote survival. So you only get a little squirt of happy chemical when you have an opportunity to meet a survival need. And the brain defines survival in a quirky way, and that's why we're all quirky.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was looking at your bio there, and we're talking about different types of chemicals, aren't we? What are the chemicals that we're specifically referring to?
Dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphin. Those are the ones I call the happy chemicals. And then the unhappy chemical cortisol is also, of course, a very huge motivator in our lives.
And is this the fight or flight response? Is that where this is all stemming from, or?
The fight or flight is the cortisol, the unhappy part. The happy part is, you could say, risk and reward.
Right.
So our brain is always seeking reward and to avoid harm. So unhappy chemicals warn you of potential harm, and happy chemicals alert you to potential reward.
Yeah, this is a fascinating topic because I think to myself exactly that. Well, we have I guess, the thought side of our beings, and then we have this physical makeup, which contains all of these chemicals. What part does, I guess, mindset come into this, and does it actually have a part to play at all, given that this is such a primal thing?
Sure. So here's the big missing factor when people think in terms of nature versus nurture is mindset is in between the two. And mindset is the neural pathways built from past experience. And they don't get enough attention today for many reasons. And one of them is the rush to blame society. But the other is because you can't experiment on a baby.
Mm.
So here we're all born with billions of neurons, but no connections between them. And our connections build from experience. So every time you have a happy or unhappy chemical released, it connects the pathway of whatever's going on at that moment. And that's how a monkey learns, like, this is good for me and this is bad for me. And that's how our nonverbal brain learns, this is good for me and this is bad for me.
Yeah, that's great feedback. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm looking at this idea of them being happy chemicals. Now, as a business person, um, I'm just wondering where these happy moments come from, and how do you define a happy moment? Is that when you make a sale, or is that when you interact with another human being? How can we see this in our, I guess, day to day?
Sure, great question. And I always bring it back to see how it works in animals, because animals don't do business, but you could see exactly those elements in your daily life. So it's a different feeling for each of the chemicals because it rewards a different kind of survival behavior. So dopamine is the feeling that a need is about to be met. So when a monkey wakes up hungry in the morning, it doesn't get any food unless it goes out and gets it. So if it looks around and it sees some fruit in the distance and climbs toward it, dopamine is that feeling that says, whoa, there's something that could meet your needs. Go for it. And every step closer releases dopamine. So in our world today, with our full bellies,
Yes.
we look for other ways of stimulating our dopamine. And we know that we have to take steps toward meeting our future needs. And we all know, for example, if you get a great sale, you feel great, but that dopamine is soon metabolized. And then the good feeling is gone and you want more. And that's what keeps us seeking. So we don't basically run out of resources.
This seems to me to be part of the core reason that we see addiction in society. Would that be right?
Yes, exactly, exactly. So we all have to learn healthy ways of stimulating this seek and find thing. And once you have an unnatural artificial stimulator, it builds such a big circuit and it tells your brain, whoa, that's the way to go. Just like the first time we always hear these stories of like a teenager who started their own little business
Yeah.
and that first sale, and it builds that huge circuit. Anything that's a great reward when you're young builds a huge circuit and you keep looking for that. But you don't keep getting high on it because it's never as exciting as the first time, and so you keep seeking it. And
Mm.
again, that's what motivated a monkey. The first time they had a really sweet, juicy mango, tasted much better than eating green leaves. And they're like, wow, this is the way to
I'll
go.
have some more of that, thank you.
Yeah. And that's how we all got wired from what happened to us when we were young.
I'm loving this topic. So fascinating for me. Excuse me. I and
So
I,
can I go on to I'm sorry, can I go on to the
oh,
social
absolutely,
chemicals?
absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. Um, I don't want to make it sound like, because a lot of people are focused on the social
No,
side.
no,
So
that's fine.
dopamine is the one for meeting your survival needs,
Right.
and everyone defines their survival needs in their own way. So, you could be having a good year, a bad year, either way, that's your brain is like, "Ooh, what's going to meet my future survival needs?" And it's not what you're telling yourself in words, but that's what your unhappy chemicals are saying. Like a lion who chases a gazelle and the gazelle gets away. It's like, oh, I better go for it. I better go for it. So that's dopamine. Now there's more social chemicals, serotonin and oxytocin, but they're very different social feelings. So oxytocin is acceptance and belonging, and serotonin is competitiveness and the pleasure of being in the one-up position. And no one likes to admit that they feel that with their conscious brain, but it's so easy to see that people feel that way. And in my study of monkey groups, it's like amazing. Monkeys are very hierarchical. And any energy they have left after filling their bellies, they're competing for a higher position in their group. And then they get more mating opportunity and more of their genes survive. And our brains are inherited from individuals who survived. And we have brains that reward you with the good feeling of serotonin when you get a little bit ahead.
Yeah, I see that. And no, I was watching your slide deck inside of your website that actually took you through this whole journey. And one of the things that really stood out for me is this. There was a lot of monkeys in there, and I remember that very famous lady. I'm sorry, I don't recall her name. Many years ago, she was. What was her name? Do you?
Jane Goodall.
That's correct. Yes, and she must have had such a wonderful experience going back then. And have you taken any of the things that you've learnt from her studies?
Yes and no. So her work was very early in this awareness,
Right.
and um, l- gradually, more empirical, more formal research was done. But and then a lot of her work has gotten off in a romantic direction,
Right. Yeah, I understand.
is which is not the whole story.
Yes.
And but at first she was totally honest about the competitiveness among apes. But in order for them to tolerate her presence, she started bribing them. And so
Yes.
what she was seeing was not really natural behavior, but sort of domesticated behavior. Now,
Understood.
but one of the really fascinating things is that at the same time she went out to study chimps, another woman was sent out to study orangutans in Indonesia, and another woman was sent out to study gorillas in another part of Africa.
Right.
So that's what got me excited. Like in each of these animals, you see different patterns, but if you distill, what do they all have in common? So that's what really got me going.
Yeah, I can see how the two paths sort of did at one point come into this tangent, then sort of bounce away from each other because one's very much science based, one's that domestication side. So, where are you at with your current studies? Is there more evolving information coming out of this, just as there is an evolution of, the story of human beings? Is what's happening for you right now? What is your focus in your studies?
So, first, I should be clear that I did not do original research.
Right.
I was connecting the dots of other people's research because in academia, people are forced into narrow silos
Yes.
and things don't get put together and obvious inferences don't get made. And I actually had to take early retirement in order to be free to think for myself.
Yep.
And I did the same thing for 25 years. So I enough.
Enough is
So
enough.
yeah, so I took early retirement at age 50, which is how I had the good fortune to start over without just worrying about what would sell.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so that's why I'm very focused on the truth. Now, in my opinion, the research that's being done today in academia is focused on what sells rather than the truth.
Hmm.
And what sells in academia today is a romantic view that the state of nature is all peace and love and competitiveness is only caused by our society. So if you tear down our society, everything will go back to peace and love. And this is so crazy because all through human history, people lived with animals and they saw how animals act. But
Yes.
today, people don't get to see how animals act, so you can give them these fantasies about animal peace and love.
Yeah, you can draw your own picture and therefore, create these fantasy illusions that they perceive as truth, like you're saying. It's a little bit saddening when you put it into that perspective, isn't it? That we're not living our truths.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But the truth is not. So the state of nature was not that much fun.
Yeah.
So we all love to think there's like this effortless, fun, happy default state
Yeah.
that we could all go back to if only we solve the next problem around the corner. But once you know that the state of nature was not effortless happiness, then it makes it, I think, a little easier to appreciate what you have. And
Yeah.
if you have children, and it's the same with animals, you say, wow, happiness is not really the effortless default state of children.
Oh no, it is certainly not. And
Yeah.
you talked about something, something that really touched me when I was going through that slide deck again. It was 60 odd on slides, and I was reading every single one, and the one that come up, and as we're talking about children, was the fighting over the red cup.
Oh, thank you. Oh, great. Which slideshow did you find that in?
It was on your page somewhere. It was just about all the different reasons for the connections and why we feel up. And once we have satisfied our need for
Okay.
security and safety, then we find children fighting over silly things like red cups. In this case,
Yeah.
siblings will fight over a
Yeah.
cup
Yeah.
because they
I forgot that I put that in there.
no,
Oh,
it's wonderful.
oh, great. So I should explain to the listener that so when I get a speaking engagement and
Yes.
I make a new slideshow, I put it on the page. And so I've accumulated a lot of these slideshows, which is why I just don't remember which one you were referring to.
Yeah, fine. There's lots of good content there.
Yeah. And it comes with the cute animal pictures. So that's at my website, innermammalinstitute.org/slideshow. And for those who prefer to watch on video, I made a video series and they're funny. So you could show them to teenagers or people who get on your nerves or whatever, uh, clients.
I'm sure we have a
And,
few of those and a few of those, hopefully.
yeah. And so you can find them either go to my website, innermammalinstitute.org, and you'll see the video in the navigation, or I have a separate site for them called youhavepoweroveryourbrain.com.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I will make sure the links back to you, Loretta, are made available below this post, below this video, wherever you find it. I want to talk a little bit about the process of writing your books. Did you find that difficult, or was that just a pleasure and it just actually just happened really easy? What was the journey like for you?
Oh, good question. Halfway between them. So first, I love to write, and I understand that not everyone is that way, and we're all different. Like I actually would rather write than be at a party. So I know that, we're all different.
Yes.
um, and yet, it did not go well for me most of my life. So I didn't find a publisher, and I probably had trouble. I think I was always trying to hit the middle ground between academic writing and popular writing. And that was hard, but after I took early retirement, I went through like zillions of versions and basically I self-published for years. And it very slowly over time, I had more and more success. So now
Right.
I have 3 commercial books and 3 more self-published books.
I've seemed to have missed a couple of the books there. I can
Yeah.
see Habits of a Happy Brain and Tame Your Anxiety. What was the other one?
So the other commercial one is called The Science of Positivity, Stop Negative Thought Patterns by Changing Your Brain Chemistry.
Fantastic. And I will make sure that the links back to those books are made available again. Now, when we look at this from a business perspective, how do we stop and say to ourselves from a practical sense, I'm going to start actively thinking about this from day to day, be it in my private life or my professional life? What are some of the practical things an individual can start doing to improve how they, approach this?
Sure. Well, something people have probably heard a lot in the business world, which is small steps are very valuable. So all it takes is a small step toward meeting an unmet need to stimulate dopamine. And people who like consultants like encourage you to focus on huge dreams. And a lot of people who focus on dreams end up getting upset. So if you take it back to the monkey sees a fruit, a ripe, juicy mango in the distance, and every step closer stimulates more dopamine. If you don't get closer to the mango, you don't get more dopamine. So just dreaming about the mango
No.
is going to leave you frustrated. But a little step toward a mango is good, and a little more and a little more. And each time you take a step, you get a little dopamine and then it's soon metabolized. So no matter what big of a mountain you climb, you always have to do more to get more. So it's good to know that you don't have to, like I always say, you don't have to rescue orphans from burning buildings to feel good. You only have to take a little step, but then another and another.
Yeah, that's some sage insight. I see there's a need for two sides of the story here. Is also coming to a realization that you have to accept that you won't always be on a high. There won't always be a rush, And you know
Yes.
what? That's okay.
Yes.
How do you
Yes.
suggest people deal with that side? Is, when they feel that
Great.
flatness?
Yes, great question. And that's more of the tame your anxiety side of, well, and also the science of positivity.
Right.
So in all of my books, I explain how cortisol works, which is that, as most people know, it's called the stress chemical. It's a chemical that alerts an animal to an immediate survival threat. And because we humans have a huge cortex attached to a mammalian operating system, we can anticipate the future. So when we're safe at this moment, we can anticipate future threats. And
Right.
that's how we drive ourselves crazy. Because when your needs are met, then you just anticipate a future time when something will go wrong and you focus on that. So the alternative is to say, I know that I'm focusing on future threats because a neural pathway gets built when whenever my cortisol is released. So all of the cortisol moments of my youth built neural pathways that tell me what danger to look for today. And that's why I'm always going back to look for that danger, that danger. When a happy chemical is flowing, that distracts you. But those happy chemicals are metabolized in a few minutes. So that's why we obsess between going back to that threatened feeling
Hmm.
or rushing into some distractor that's not really good for you. So the middle ground, I call it neutral gear, is to say, my happy spurt is over. Now I'm in neutral. I don't have to rush to a drug of an up, but I don't have to go into a threatened feeling. I can just say that my brain is guided by my old neural pathways, but I have this teeny weeny free space in between activating that next circuit where I get to choose, where I get to scan for opportunity instead of just rushing into an old response.
That's incredible. And I think about, the eons of time that we've been in existence, Loretta, and I think to myself, do we really have any control? From a you know what I mean, from a practical day to day versus all of these the genes that we've built up over, again, eons. What sort of level of control could we really expect?
So just what I explained, it's that, so the electricity in your brain flows like water in a storm. It finds the path of least resistance.
Right.
So when I take in the world around me, electricity is flowing to my brain, and I could either just let it flow, then
Hmm.
it's going to just flow into the old pathways, and I'm going to basically repeat myself. We
Yes.
all
Yes.
basically repeat ourselves.
Yes.
Or I could say, before I just go with the flow, I'm going to stop for 1 minute and consider maybe a second choice or what other option I might have. And to do that, it actually takes a lot of energy. So the way you get free will, the way you get this choice to not be on automatic, is to take your energy away from whatever else you're using it on.
Hmm.
And you don't have to do it all the time, but you could even just say, a minute, an hour. I'm going to stop rushing and say, what do I really want right now?
Yeah, thank you so much. This is just really, really powerful insight, and I can see why people put up, picture frames of, things that they want to trigger themselves to think about, because it does take a little bit of effort to get to that space. So, Loretta, it's just been a really incredible journey, a really incredible time spending with you on the show today. Again, if you could share with our audience where they can find you.
Sure. Innermammalinstitute.org. Innermammalinstitute.org. So all my books are listed there, my videos. I have my own podcast called The Happy Brain. And I have lots and lots of free resources, such as blogs and slideshows and infographics.
And having seen this website, I can guarantee you it is resource packed. So again, Loretta, thank you so very much for spending some time with me on the My Future Business Show today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.